Arlecchino is the newest playable harbinger to join the roster, and she packs a punch, or rather, a scythe. Arlecchino is a complex character who can be very powerful and can compete with the likes of New Villette if you fully understand her entire kit. So to understand Arlecchino, we have to first understand the Bond of Life. Bond of Life is a mechanic that prevents healing when applied to a character. While Bond of Life is active, it absorbs healing from the character based on its base value and prevents the character from being healed. And after this character is healed for an amount equal to the Bond of Life, the Bond of Life can then be cleared. Okay, so now you know what Bond of Life is. Let's briefly go over Arlecchino's kit. Arlecchino is a normal attacking damage dealer. Arlecchino's charge attack is also unique, as you can hold her charge attack to glide around and it looks very cool. However, it doesn't benefit her in combat. And in a way, Arlecchino is like Hu Tao, where she infuses her normal attacks with Pyro when she receives a Bond of Life worth 30% of her max HP or greater. And this is triggered by her passive Masquerade of the Red Death. And while this is active, her normal attacks will deal increased damage based on her current attack and the active Bond of Life percentage. And using her normal attacks will consume 7.5% of her current Bond of Life. So she heavily relies on having Bond of Life to deal maximum damage. But how do you get Bond of Life? Well, Arlecchino has several ways to grant herself Bond of Life. Her elemental skill on cast will deal damage to opponents and mark them with blood depth directives. This directive is the crucial part because when you use her charge attack, you will consume this directive and gain a specific amount of Bond of Life, which varies depending on how much time has passed since the moment you applied it and the moment you claim it with a charge attack. If consumed right away, she will gain Bond of Life worth 65%, and if consumed after 5 seconds, the blood depth directive will become a blood depth due, and consuming it will grant her 130% Bond of Life. But the maximum amount of Bond of Life she can have in one rotation by both kinds of blood depth is 145%, and Arlecchino can gain Bond of Life up to 200% via external sources. So the damage uptime with Arlecchino is solely determined by how much Bond of Life she has, as it has no duration limit, so a rotation will be pretty flexible, especially considering she can even swap in and out pretty freely, so you can use a Kazuha Sword in between for even more damage. Now the other crucial part is that she can't be healed by other characters or weapons. As it stands, the only way of healing her is to use her elemental burst, which will clear any Bond of Life she has and heal her based on her current attack and that Bond of Life. So unfortunately, if you need an emergency heal, you can heal her, but any Bond of Life she has will be cleared and you have to start all over again. But the healing amount from her elemental burst is quite decent, and the 20% damage reduction she gets to all type of damage makes it a little bit better. Anyways, on top of healing, her elemental burst will also reset the elemental skill's cooldown, and this is needed because her elemental skill has a freaking 30 seconds long cooldown. Now her cooldown situation is pretty tricky because her enhanced normal attacks also reduce the cooldown of her elemental skill. This makes it possible to sometime recover the elemental skill by the start of the next rotation, but having a full reset on her elemental burst makes it more flexible, but unfortunately it has the downside of clearing any Bond of Life she has. So the rotation with Arlecchino will be something like you start the rotation with the elemental skill, then either you wait for a few seconds or swap out to other characters and do their stuff, then you consume the blood depth with a charge attack, and then you spam normal attacks, and by the end of the rotation you will recover her elemental skill and you can repeat the whole process again. But she doesn't have any resistance to interruption, so running a shielder like Zhongli would be beneficial for her as she does not benefit from healers, and with a shield she won't be taking much damage for healing to be an issue, plus the added interruption resistance. And I will cover more of her teammates later, so stay tuned because she has a lot of different team options. And before I jump to her weapons, let's talk a few technicalities. First, the damage multiplier increase she gets from the Bond of Life partially depends on how much Bond of Life she has at that specific moment, since each normal attack from her will decrease the Bond of Life she has. This means that her damage will be at its peak at the start of her rotation and it will progressively get smaller. This makes her damage profile quite front loaded, which is unique for a normal attacking character. And in terms of talent investment, the normal attack talent is pretty much the only thing you need to care about, since that's where all of her damage is coming from. The Masquerade of the Red Death, the talent that increases her normal attack multiplier, is also built in her normal attack talent. Her elemental skill and burst are decently strong, but not that noteworthy compared to the normal attack. Plus her healing amount doesn't increase with her elemental burst level, only the damage multiplier does. So overall, she needs pretty low investment talent wise. And by the way, if you are enjoying this video, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing because it helps me way more than you think, and thanks for that. Now let's talk about her best in slot weapons. So Arlecchino loves to have as much Bond of Life as possible, and the only weapon that can provide her Bond of Life is her signature Crimson Moon Semblance. It has pretty good stats, being 674 base attack attack and 22% crit rate, and Arlecchino is an attack scaling character, so a high base attack is very good here, and the passive grants the wielder Bond of Life after hitting enemies with a charge attack, and if the wielder already has a Bond of Life active, they gain 12% damage bonus, and if the Bond of Life is 30% or greater, they gain an additional 24% damage bonus. So this weapon is ideal for Arlecchino as it gives her extra Bond of Life and 36% damage bonus on top of that. Plus Arlecchino also get 30% pyro damage bonus from one of her passives, so building her becomes quite flexible, so you should consider her signature if you want the best weapon for her. But other polearms like the Staff of Homa and the Jade Spear are also very good. Both have pretty similar stats and passives that are easily activated and benefits Arlecchino, and Staff of Homa is a great weapon for anyone, so Homa will be her second best option behind her signature, and the Staff of Scarlet Sands can be as good as her signature if you build her with Elemental Mastery and run her in a vaporized team. And for 4-star polearms, the best option will be the Deathmatch followed by the Blackcliff polearm. Honestly, aside from these two, we don't have many good 4-star polearms for Arlecchino. Both of these provide decent crit stats and passive. The Dragon's Bane can be good in a vaporized team, but Arlecchino's normal attacks have standard ICD, so she can't proc very many vapes, and the Ballad is also good for vaporize only if you run characters of 3 different elements, and the prototype Star Glitter, believe it or not, is a viable choice in the off chance you don't have a single usable polearm. Although the energy recharge is much less valuable than the crit stats, but the passive is at least usable, plus it's a craftable weapon, so everyone has access to it. But the White Tassel is much better than this. Lol, you just got outclassed by a 3-star weapon. Surprisingly, it has a decent amount of crit rate and it increases normal attack damage by 45% at refinement 5, so this is a perfect weapon for beginners. And well, in terms of building, she has a new artifact set, the Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy, and it goes without saying it's her best. It gives 18% attack bonus and a total damage bonus that can reach up to 54% when Bond of Life increases or decreases. So this is basically the Marachuse Hunter for Bond of Life characters, so it's pretty nice. However, it's not much better than a very accessible alternative, which is the Gladiator set. She's a normal attack DPS, so the Gladiator set should perform very well, and considering this is a set that has been around ever since the game came out, I expect people to have very good pieces of this set, and any 2-piece attack plus pyro damage will work, but try getting a decent set as soon as possible. And in terms of stat building, she's pretty straightforward. She wants attack percent for the sands, pyro damage bonus for the goblet, and crit rate or damage for the circlet. And her energy requirements of course depends on her team, and for a vaporized team, Elemental Mastery becomes more valuable, so focus a little bit on Elemental Mastery substats. As for team building, she's quite versatile because she's a normal attack damage dealer, and compared to somebody like Hu Tao for example, who is a charge attack damage dealer, she benefits less from vaporize or melts because Hu Tao can vaporize all her charge attacks because of no ICD, while Arlecchino can't vape all her normal attacks, so the benefit she gets is smaller, and as a result, her team situation looks kind of weird. She can be run in mono pyro teams and vaporized teams, all are pretty great, but there is no single team that I would call the best for her. But she can't be healed and there is no interruption resistance at C0, so shielders are definitely the best choice for her, and also the fact that she cannot be healed by other characters creates some anti-synergy with Furina, who can provide a ton of damage bonus through fanfare but needs HP to increase or decrease. But even in terms of damage output, this team can perform reasonably well, but in terms of durability, it is not viable because Arlecchino can't be healed, and on top of that, you add the fact that she will lose HP due to Furina's minions, then she starts looking very fragile, which is not ideal. Bennett, for example, can be used with her for his insane attack boost, plus at C6, Bennett also provides pyro damage, but she won't be benefiting from his healing, and Bennett's elemental burst also applies pyro on the character that is currently on the circle of his elemental burst. This will allow enemies to trigger reactions like overload to knock her down, but if you bring a shielder, then it is of no concern. So shielders in general will be her best friends, especially Zhongli and his Dongli, and you can't go wrong with Kazuha, who can give a good amount of damage bonus and can also group the enemies together. Offensive supports such as Fischl, Beidou, Xingqiu, Yelan are all very good, while Xingqiu and Yelan are by far the best options for personal damage as well as enabling vaporize. But if you are using Fischl or Beidou, they can do good damage, but the overloaded reaction will push back small enemies, and that is very frustrating. And generally, vaporized team will do more damage than overloaded teams because of how powerful vaporize is. And Chevreuse is a bit interesting because she restricts you to only have pyro and electro characters, and with Arlecchino, who can't be healed by other characters, survivability is a big factor here because the only defensive options you have are Toma, Dia and Beidou. Then again, Toma's shield is pretty non-existent and Dia does not provide a shield, but her damage mitigation can be useful, but you can sometimes take serious damage and you always have a risk of getting one-shotted. And Beidou's shield from her elemental burst is also pretty weak and you need her C1 to even get this shield. So Chevreuse team in general are not very good for Arlecchino unless you are fighting a boss who can't be knocked around by the overloaded reaction and if you are capable of dodging enemy attacks. So for the average player, you will be better sticking off to a vaporized price focused team, and Arlecchino's constellations are very good, and by far her C1 is the most significant other than her C6 of course. C1 increases the Masquerade of Red Death multiplier by 100% and gives her partial interruption resistance. This interruption resistance is not flawless, but it's pretty much as close to a shield as you can get. This is one of the best early constellations ever. Her C2 is also quite nice. The Blood Depth directive will become Blood Depth due instantly, and she will deal more damage when absorbing blood depths, and she will also gain a 20% physical and elemental damage resistance. C3 and C5 are normal attack and elemental burst level ups. C5 is pretty mid in my opinion. When she absorbs blood depth, her burst cooldown will decrease by 2 seconds and she will get 15 energy back, and at C6 she becomes an absolute monster. Damage of her elemental burst will be massively increased, and she will also get 10% crit rate and 70% crit damage after using her elemental skill. Pretty broken C6 if you ask me, but what can you expect from spending $2000? This will completely change her rotation and make her even more powerful, and I envy all of you who will C6 her. So Arlecchino is a flexible offensive character that has already become a top tier DPS and is competing with the likes of Nuvelet and Alhaitham, but you have to find the best team for her yourself, otherwise she will become another DM. So let me know, how is your father doing, or did she go to buy milk? Anyways, check out this other video here. See you in the next one.